My parents. We need space. Don't reach out. Sister liked. I. Understood. Midnight. Family trust. Frozen, retirement, fund drained, property taxes back on them. At 4:25 a.m., they called 36 times. The phone rang at 4:25 a.m. for the 36th time that night. I lay in the dark and stared at the screen, which displayed Mom. I didn't pick up the phone. Outside the window, night still reigned, only somewhere far away. Above the rooftops, the sky was beginning to lighten to gray. My stomach felt cold and empty, as if I had drunk ice water on an empty stomach. My hands were shaking, even though the room was warm. The ringing stopped. 3 seconds later, the next one began. I reached out, turned the phone screen down, and stared at the ceiling. The sound became muffled but did not disappear. It was like a mosquito that wouldn't let me sleep. Only this mosquito was my mother, and I had just done something she didn't even suspect until midnight. I couldn't sleep all night. I lay there and replayed yesterday in my head. The morning was normal. I woke up at 8, drank coffee, and sat down to work. Freelance design has its advantages. You can work from anywhere, wearing whatever you want. There are downsides too. No one will see you sitting there in an old t-shirt not having washed properly for 3 days. But I liked it. It was my job, my money, my life. At noon, as usual, I called my mom. "Hi, Mom. How are you?" "Fine," Wendy replied briefly. Her voice sounded tired, a little irritated. "How's Dad? Did he remember his appointment with the cardiologist?" "Violet, he's a grown man. He remembers." "I just want to make sure." "Maybe you need something. I can stop by tonight." "No, we have everything we need." The conversation lasted 3 minutes. I hung up with the feeling that I had done something wrong again. I didn't know what, but the feeling was familiar. It had been with me for as long as I could remember. At 15, I called again. I asked if my mother wanted me to come over tomorrow to help with the cleaning. Wendy said she could manage on her own, her voice even colder than before. I heard Emmy on the other end of the line. She was saying something in the background, laughing. My mother answered her, then turned back to me. "Violet, I'm busy. We'll talk later." In the evening, at 9 o'clock, I wrote in the family chat just to keep in touch. Something about finding old photos from our summer vacation 15 years ago. It would be cool to look at them together sometime. The message was read immediately. Wendy, Ethan, Emmy. There was no response for 5 minutes, then 10. I sat with my phone in my hands and waited. I don't know what exactly. Maybe an emoji, maybe, "Yes, let's do it." Something. At 10:37 p.m., a message came from my mom. "We need space, don't contact us." I reread it 3 times. The words didn't change. A like appeared under the message. Emmy. My younger sister just liked the fact that my mom asked me to disappear. My fingers trembled as I typed my reply. Got it. Nothing else. I put my phone down and sat on the couch, staring at the blank wall. My head was empty. No anger, no pain, just silence, as if I had been turned off. Half an hour later, the silence ended. First there was pain, sharp, as if someone had stabbed me in the ribs. I clutched my chest, staring at my phone, where my mother's message still hung. Don't get in touch. I, who called them every day, sometimes several times a day, who came every weekend, who paid half of their bills, who set up a trust 5 years ago so they wouldn't have to worry about the future, who contributed money to my father's pension fund because his law firm didn't provide enough for a decent pension, who, from the age of 25, paid taxes on their house because, "Violet, you earn good money and we're going through a difficult period right now." I gave them everything, and they asked me to disappear, and Emmy supported them. The pain turned to rage, cold, clear, like ice. I got up, took my laptop, and sat down at the table. My hands were no longer shaking. My fingers moved clearly, quickly, as if they knew what to do. First, the trust. I went into my office and found the documents. I created it 5 years ago when the orders started bringing in decent money. The lawyer advised me to set everything up through a trust. It's more reliable, easier to manage, and my parents will be provided for. I agreed because I wanted them not to worry, so they would know that their eldest daughter would take care of them. The trustee was me. The beneficiaries were Wendy and Ethan. I changed the status of the trust to frozen. A click of the mouse, done. Then my dad's pension fund. I had been putting money into it every month for 3 years. At first it was $200, and last year it was $500. Dad never thanked me. He only said once, "It's good that you're finally thinking about the future." At the time, I didn't understand whose future he was talking about, his or mine. I removed myself from the additional contributions. Click, done. Property taxes. That was the most painful part. For 6 years, I paid taxes on their house. From the age of 25, as soon as I started earning a decent income. My mother said that they were going through a difficult period, that my father's company needed time to recover from the crisis. "You'll help, won't you, Violet? You're the older one, you understand." I helped. Every year, before May 1st, I transferred money for taxes. $4,300 every year, 6 years. I went to the tax office website and found their property. I changed the payer. Now the official payer was Ethan Morrow, the owner of the house again. The system asked for confirmation. I confirmed. Click, done. By midnight, I was finished. I closed my laptop, got up, and walked over to the window. The city was asleep, the lights in the windows going out one by one. I stood and looked at the darkness, feeling something tighten in my chest. Not regret, not doubt, relief. I went to bed at 1 o'clock. I couldn't sleep. I lay there with my eyes open, remembering. I'm 8. Mom is getting dressed, packing her bag. "Violet, sit with Emmy. I'm going out to lunch with Julia." But I wanted to go to Sarah's. "You're the older one. You have to be responsible. I'm 14. It's evening, my parents are out, and Emmy is hungry." "What's for dinner?" she asks. "I don't know. I'll make something." "Why do you always cook? Where's Mom?" "At Dad's office. They'll be back late." I'm 17. It's the last week before summer vacation. "Violet, could you stay home?" Mom asks. "Dad and I are going to Vermont for a week and someone has to look after Emmy." "But I wanted to go to summer camp with my class." "You're too old for camp. Be reasonable." I stayed. Emmy was 14. She could easily take care of herself, but my mom insisted. I missed camp. My friends later shared photos, campfires, the lake, laughter. I sat at home and watched TV series with Emmy. At 4:25 a.m., the phone rang for the first time that night. I looked at the screen. "Mom." I didn't answer. 3 minutes later, again. Then again. And again. I lay there and counted. 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 36. At 6, the sky outside the window brightened. I got up and went to the kitchen. My hands weren't shaking yet. I made coffee, listening to the phone vibrating on the table in the bedroom. Another call. I drank my coffee slowly, in small sips, hot, bitter, delicious. Then I went back to the bedroom and picked up the phone. 36 missed calls, all from my mother. I opened the family chat and typed a message, short and to the point. "You asked for space. I'm giving you space. In everything." Sent. Turned off the phone, sat down on the bed, and smiled for the first time in many hours. I spent the morning at my laptop pretending to work. I rented the office a year ago. A small room on the 3rd floor of an old building in the center, with a window overlooking the street and the constant hum of cars. It cost $300 a month, but it was worth it. I couldn't concentrate at home. I constantly wanted to snack, watch TV series, check my phone. Here I worked, or was supposed to work. The project was open on the screen. Packaging design for a small organic cosmetics brand. The owner, Melissa, had ordered a series of labels for creams and lotions. She wanted something minimalistic but warm. green shades, maybe beige, natural fonts. I created 3 options, but none of them seemed right. I looked at the screen and saw my mom's message. "We need space. Don't contact us." A like from Emmy underneath it. My finger hovered over the 4th color palette option, but I couldn't see the colors. All I could see were those words. The phone lay face down on the table, turned off. I turned it on at 8 in the morning for a couple of minutes to check the time, to see if a client had written. I saw 7 missed calls from my mom, 3 from my dad, 2 from Emmy. I didn't answer them. I turned it off again. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I gave up. Instead of designing, I opened old files, photos I had stored in the cloud. I found the family folder. I hadn't opened it in 5 years, maybe more. The first photo, I'm 28, standing in front of my parents' house with boxes. Moving day. I had just rented my first 1-bedroom apartment. Mom isn't smiling in the photo. Her face is worried. Dad is standing behind her, his arms crossed over his chest. Emmy isn't there. She was inside watching something on TV. "Are you sure?" my mother asked that day. "Violet, you can stay. Why do you need to spend money on rent?" "I'm 28, Mom. It's time to live on my own." "But who will help Emmy? She's trying to find herself right now. She needs support." Emma was 24 at the time. She had just quit her job at a coffee shop, her 3rd job in a year. She said the manager was picking on her, that the schedule didn't suit her, that she needed time to figure out what she wanted to do. "You have each other," I replied. "Emma's an adult. She'll be fine." Mom frowned but didn't insist. I took the boxes and left. The new apartment smelled of paint and someone else's life, but it was mine. The first night there, I lay on a mattress on the floor, looked at the empty walls, and felt something like freedom. A month later, my mother called. "Violet, can you help Emmy? She needs money for bartending classes. She wants to try her hand at this field." "How much?" $800. "It's a month-long course with job placement afterward. I paid for it. Emmy went to the first class, then the second. She didn't come to the third. She said the teacher was boring, that it wasn't for her. Mom supported her. Not everyone is born for routine, Vio. Your sister is a creative person. She needs something else." I didn't say anything then. $800 just disappeared, but I didn't say anything. Because what could I say? That Emmy is irresponsible? That Mom spoils her? They wouldn't understand, or they wouldn't want to understand. I remembered the day I suggested Emmy try freelancing. It seemed like a good idea to me. She could work from anywhere, at her own pace. I even offered to teach her the basics of graphic design, for free, of course. "Not everyone wants to sit at a computer all day, Vio," Emmy grimaced. "It looks so boring. You just press buttons, and that's it." I press buttons. I smiled and nodded. I didn't explain how much time each project takes, how many clients turn down work, how many sleepless nights I spent learning, looking for orders, building a reputation. Why? She wouldn't want to listen. At 5 in the evening, I turned on my phone. I couldn't take it anymore. My hands were shaking as I pressed the power button. The screen lit up. Messages started popping up one after another. 16 new messages, 15 missed calls. Mom at 9 in the morning. "Violet, what have you done? Call me immediately." Mom at 10. "This is not serious. You can't do this. We are your parents." Dad at 11. "Violet, we need to talk. What you did was wrong." Emmy at noon. "Have you completely lost your mind? Mom is crying because of you." Mom at 2 p.m. "Call me right now. I'm not kidding." I read and felt something tighten inside. Not the words themselves, but what was missing from them. No sorry. No, maybe we went too far. No mention of the message that started it all. "We need space. Don't contact us." They wanted me to disappear, but only emotionally. The money had to stay. I locked the screen and put the phone on the table. I didn't answer. I got up, grabbed my jacket, and went home. It was drizzling outside, but I walked. I didn't feel like taking the bus, and a taxi seemed stuffy. I just wanted to walk and not think. It didn't work. My thoughts spun around like a broken record. They think I'm obligated to help because they're my parents. But why me? Why not Emmy? She's their daughter too. She's also an adult, 27 years old, but she can find herself. She can quit her job, she can live with her parents and not pay for housing. And I had to pay for everyone. I reached home in 40 minutes. I was soaked through. I entered the building, climbed the stairs. The elevator wasn't working again. On the 4th floor, I stopped to catch my breath. My legs were buzzing. My hair was stuck to my face. The keys were in my jacket pocket. I took them out, opened the door, and heard footsteps on the stairs. Someone's voices. My heart was pounding. I froze, the key in the lock. I listened. Should be home. Where could she be? My mother's voice. Sharp, irritated. Wendy, maybe you shouldn't. Dad, quieter, uncertain. Are you indulging her too? She left us without money, Ethan. Without money! I opened the door, went inside, and closed it. I locked it with the key and the chain. I stood in the hallway, wet and trembling, listening to them climb the stairs. The doorbell rang. Sharp, insistent. I went to the video intercom. On the small screen were Mom, Dad, and Emmy. Wendy was standing close to the camera, her face red, her lips pressed together. Dad was behind her, his hands in his jacket pockets, looking at the floor. Emmy was behind him, holding the phone, filming. "Violet!" Mom shouted into the camera. "I know you're home. Open the door." I stood there looking at the screen. I could have not opened the door, pretended I wasn't there, waited until they left. But something inside me broke. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was anger. I don't know. I opened the door, went out into the hallway, closed the door behind me, and went down half the stairs so they could see me but couldn't reach the apartment door. "What are you doing?" My mother began immediately without saying hello. "How could you?" "Hi, Mom." "No, hi, Mom. Do you know what you've done?" "The bank called today and said we now have to pay taxes ourselves, on our own house. It's your house. It's logical that you pay. We can't afford $4,000 a year. I've been paying for 6 years," I said calmly. $25,800 in total. "I think you can handle it." Wendy gasped in indignation. Dad finally looked up. "Violet, this isn't about money. It's about respect. We're your parents." "You asked me not to contact you," I replied. "I listened. I gave you space." "Are you even sane?" Emmy interjected, still holding the phone. "Mom talked to you nicely and you made a scene." I looked at my sister. She was standing behind me wearing a new jacket that looked like it cost at least $300. Her jeans were new too, her shoes, her hair was freshly dyed. Mom bought all of it, of course, with Dad's money. Or mine. Who knows how they divided the budget? "Did you talk to her nicely?" I repeated. "Is don't get in touch nice?" "You suffocated Mom with your calls," Emmy exclaimed. 3 times a day. Constant questions, constant control. I was worried. "You were meddling in our lives." "Violet," Mom said again, her voice a little softer, "we didn't mean to hurt you. We just needed time. But that doesn't mean you have to take the money." "We have agreements. We have..." "Agreements," I interrupted her. "What agreements? I didn't sign anything. I helped because you're my parents. But you asked me to leave. I left. Everything." "You have Emmy," I continued, looking at my sister. "She's 27. She's an adult. She works. Let her help." "Emmy doesn't earn much," Wendy exclaimed. "She can't." "That's not my problem anymore," I said quietly, and I turned toward the stairs. "Violet, Violet, wait, we're not done." I climbed the stairs and got the keys. My hands were shaking again. I opened the door and went inside. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice, high-pitched and angry. My father was saying something, more quietly. Emmy was filming. I closed the door. I locked it with a key and a chain. I stood in the hallway looking at the closed door, and suddenly my legs gave way. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor in my wet jacket, and I cried. Not quietly, not carefully. I cried my heart out, as if I were 8 years old again, and my mom had just told me she didn't have time to hear about my day at school because Emmy needed help with her drawing. I cried and couldn't stop. For the first time in many years, I cried for real, without holding back, and behind the door, my mother was still shouting my name. The next morning, I woke up to a message. My phone vibrated on the nightstand, and I reached for it mechanically. Mom, 7:30 a.m. You'll regret this. We'll change everything. Don't think you'll get away with this. I locked the screen and put the phone back. I got up and went to the bathroom. In the mirror, I saw an unfamiliar woman with red eyes and a pale face. I splashed cold water on my cheeks, trying to dispel the feeling of unreality. By evening, 8 more messages had arrived. Dad, at 10 o'clock. Violet, this is not adult behavior. We need to sit down and talk properly. Emmy, at 12 o'clock. A voice message, 2 minutes long. I didn't listen to it right away. I put it off until later. Mom, at 2 in the afternoon. We'll contact a lawyer. What you did is probably illegal. Emmy, at 4. Another voice message, 3 minutes long. At 5, I finally opened the first voice message from Emmy. I pressed play and put the phone on the table, continuing to work. I can't believe you really did that. My sister's voice was high-pitched, on the verge of hysteria. Do you know how old Mom is? She's 67. Dad's 70. They can't work full-time to pay all these bills, and you just went and abandoned them. For what? For one message? You're so hurtful, Violet. You've always been like this. Remember when you were 16 and you didn't talk to Mom for a week because she wouldn't let you go to some party? You always made a mountain out of a molehill, and now you've crossed the line. You've destroyed the family, do you understand? Mom cries every day, Dad can't sleep. And you're sitting there in your apartment thinking you're so smart, huh? That you punished us? You're just selfish, Violet. You always have been. You only thought about yourself. I turned off the recording without listening to the end. My hands weren't shaking. I only felt tired. I didn't open the second voice message. I deleted it without listening to it. The week passed in this mode. Messages in the morning, messages in the afternoon, messages in the evening. I didn't reply. I didn't block them. I just read them, listened to them, and put my phone away. It was like watching a movie about someone else's life. I used work as a lifeline. I finished the organic cosmetics project in 3 days. Melissa was delighted with the final version. I immediately took on 2 new orders, a logo for a law firm and a series of illustrations for a children's book. I worked 12 hours a day, sometimes more. I turned on my laptop at 8 in the morning and turned it off around 9 in the evening. I ate without looking up from the screen. She drank liters of coffee. The clients were satisfied. The money was coming in. I looked at my balance and felt nothing. No joy, no pride, just numbers on the screen. On Thursday evening, 5 days after the scandal, I met with Tessa. She wrote in the morning, "Let's have coffee. We haven't seen each other in a month." I wanted to refuse, to say that I was busy, but something stopped me. Perhaps it was the fact that I hadn't talked to anyone except clients for almost a week. We met at a small coffee shop near her work. Tessa worked as a dental assistant, and the clinic was 2 blocks from my office. She arrived 5 minutes early and was already sitting at a table by the window. She waved at me and smiled. Tessa is 32. She has been divorced for 3 years and is raising her son, Elijah, who is 6. We met in college, in our freshman year, when we were both trying to understand integrals. We didn't understand them, but we became friends. After college, we saw each other less often. Life, work, her wedding, then a child, then a divorce. But she remained someone I could trust. "You look terrible," Tessa said instead of greeting me. "Thanks." "You look great too." She laughed. The waiter brought coffee. I ordered a cappuccino. Tessa ordered an Americano. "What happened?" she asked when we were alone. I hadn't planned to tell her. I wanted to say something neutral. Work, fatigue, spring is always a difficult time. But the words poured out. I told her everything. About the message from my mom, about Emmy's about what I did that night, about the scandal in the stairwell, about a week of threats and accusations. Tessa listened silently without interrupting, only nodding from time to time. When I finished, she took a sip of coffee and said, "You know, I always thought your family was kind of unhealthy." I blinked, not expecting that. "What?" "You gave too much, Vio, and they just took. I saw it back in college. Remember when we were planning to go to Miami for spring break? You had already bought your ticket and booked the hotel. Then your mom called and said they needed help with something. I don't remember what. And you canceled everything. You lost the money for the ticket and the hotel. You went home. I remembered. I was 20, it was my sophomore year. Mom said they needed to move furniture into a new house, that Emmy couldn't do it alone, that they needed my help. I canceled the trip. Tessa went alone, met a guy there, and dated him for 6 months. I thought you understood," Tessa continued, "that they were using you, but you never complained. You just did what they asked. They're my parents." "So what?" Tessa leaned forward. "Parents are supposed to be normal people, too. They can't just take and take without giving anything back. That's not love, Vio. That's manipulation." The word hung in the air. Manipulation. I sat there and digested it. I wanted to argue, to say that Tessa was exaggerating, but something inside me quietly agreed. I just wanted them to. I fell silent, not knowing how to finish the sentence. "Love you," Tessa prompted quietly. "Vio, they either love you or they don't. You can't earn love. That's not how it works." We sat in silence. People walked by outside the window, cars drove past, someone laughed at the next table. An ordinary day, an ordinary life. "What should I do?" I finally asked. "Move on," Tessa replied simply, "without them, or with them, but on your terms, not theirs." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I understood how to do that. I walked home. Even though Tessa offered me a ride, I needed time to think. Tessa's words kept spinning around in my head, haunting me. You can't earn love. But I tried. My whole life. I called every day, asked how they were doing, helped with money, visited every weekend. I did everything they asked, and even more. And still, my mother wrote, "Don't get in touch." And Emmy agreed. And now, they blame me. On Friday, exactly 1 week after that scandal, Margaret Willoughby called me. I didn't answer right away. The number was unfamiliar. It could have been salespeople or some kind of advertisement. But something made me answer. "Violet Morrow?" A woman's voice, formal, dry. "Yes, this is me. Margaret Willoughby, Notary Public. I have been serving your family for the last 15 years. I remembered her. A tall woman with gray hair, always dressed in a business suit. She kept all my parents' documents, wills, contracts, some legal matters related to my father's company. I'm listening. "I'm calling to inform you officially that your parents have made changes to their will. All real estate and savings will now go to your sister, Emmy Morrow. You have been removed from the list of heirs." Silence. I could hear my own heartbeat, the hum of cars outside the window, someone's footsteps in the stairwell. "Violet, can you hear me?" "Yes, thank you for the information." Margaret paused, as if waiting for something. Maybe hysterics, maybe questions. "If you want to appeal this decision, I can recommend a lawyer." "No, thank you." I hung up the phone. I sat on the sofa, staring at the empty wall. Disinherited. The house I grew up in, my parents' savings, everything goes to Emmy. I get nothing. It should have hurt. But I felt only a strange, cold clarity. It was as if the fog had lifted and I could finally see the situation clearly. They showed me what I meant to them, an ATM. As long as I gave them money, I was needed. As soon as I stopped, I became useless to everyone. In the evening, I went out onto the balcony with a cup of tea. The sky had darkened, and the city was lit up by thousands of windows. Somewhere out there, 20 minutes away, was my parents' house. Their window was lit up. Mom is sitting in the kitchen, maybe watching TV. Dad is in his study at the computer. Emmy is in her room, the one that was supposed to be a guest room but became hers 10 years ago. I thought, Maybe this is good. Maybe I'm finally free. I don't owe anyone anything. I don't have to prove that I'm good enough. I don't have to try to earn what should be given freely. Tessa was right. I can't earn their love, because if you have to earn it, it's not love. The tea had gone cold in my cup. I sat and looked at the city, feeling not relief, no, but calm, cold, clear, like ice. At 11 o'clock in the evening, I picked up my phone. I opened the family chat, the one where it all began. I scrolled up to my mother's message. "We need space. Don't contact us." A like from Emmy, my understood. Then a week of messages, threats, accusations, manipulation, no apologies, no acknowledgments. I tapped the 3 dots in the upper corner. Delete chat. Confirmation. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. The chat disappeared. The screen was empty, as if it had never existed. I left my parents' and Emmy's numbers unblocked, just in case. If something really important happens, an accident, illness, something serious, I want to know. But I didn't open any more messages. I went to bed at 1 in the morning. In my dream, I was little again, 8 years old. I'm sitting on the porch of my parents' house, waiting for my mom to come back. Emmy is sleeping inside. I promised to look after her. Mom said she'd be back in an hour. 3 hours have passed. I'm sitting and waiting. It's getting dark, it's getting cold. But I don't go inside. I wait for my mother to come back and say, "Well done, Violet, you did it. I'm proud of you." In my dream, I never got to hear those words. I woke up at 6 in the morning feeling like I hadn't slept at all. 6 months passed unnoticed. It was as if I had fallen asleep in March and woke up in September. Life without daily calls to my parents seemed strangely empty at first. I would wake up in the morning and automatically reach for my phone to call my mom and ask how she was doing. Then I would remember and put the phone back down. For the first few weeks, this feeling wouldn't go away. It was as if I had forgotten something important, as if I had left a door unlocked somewhere. But gradually, it faded away. Mornings became calmer. I made coffee, ate breakfast without rushing, looked out the window. Sometimes I even read. I never had enough time before. Work picked up. Without the constant feeling of guilt, without Emmy writing once a month, "Vio, can you lend me $50 until payday?" She never paid me back. Without having to set aside money for my parents' needs, I could finally focus. In May, I hired Kevin, a third-year student who was studying graphic design and looking for a part-time job. He is 21, always wears wrinkled t-shirts with rock band logos, and drinks energy drinks by the liter. But he has golden hands. He's a quick learner and isn't afraid of routine. I paid him $500 a month for 10 hours of work a week. He did simple things: image processing, preparing files for printing, communicating with printing houses. I was directly involved in design. Orders increased. I raised my prices. Not sharply, but noticeably. Clients didn't disappear. On the contrary, my portfolio grew, as did the reviews. By July, I was earning a steady $4,500 a month. After all the expenses, office rent, Kevin's salary, taxes, personal expenses, I had about $2,000 left. I opened a separate savings account, the first one in my life, just for myself. Not for my parents, not for Emmy, not just in case. For me. For a future that I couldn't yet clearly imagine, but it was out there somewhere. Every month I transferred $1,000 into it, sometimes $1,200 if there were more orders. By September, I had accumulated $6,800. I looked at this amount and felt something warm, similar to pride. In June, Tessa dragged me to a networking event for freelancers. At first, I refused. I don't like events where everyone smiles forcedly and exchanges business cards. But Tessa insisted, "You need to socialize more, Vio. Do you even leave the house except for work?" She was right. For the past few months, I had been living according to the same routine: home office, home. Sometimes I would meet up with Tessa. Sometimes I would go to the store. That was it. The event was held at a co-working space in the city center. There were about 50 people, coffee, light snacks, and presentations. I stood by the table with croissants, holding a glass of juice and trying not to look out of place. "Did they drag you here too?" I heard a voice from the side. I turned around. A man of about 35 wearing jeans and a plain gray t-shirt was smiling. His light hair was a little longer than fashionable, and he wore thin-rimmed glasses. "You could say that," I replied. "Alec," he said, extending his hand. "I write code for startups, most of which go bankrupt." I couldn't help but smile. "Violet, designer. I make logos for companies that sometimes go bankrupt too." So we're in the same boat. We talked for about an hour. Alec turned out to be surprisingly easy to talk to. He didn't bombard me with questions or try to impress me. He just talked. About work, about the city, about how networking events are annoying but necessary because contacts are important. At the end of the evening, he asked for my email address for work purposes. I gave it to him. He wrote it down in his phone, smiled, and left. I didn't expect him to write, but 3 days later I had a message in my inbox. "Hi, Violet, I've been thinking. Maybe you know a good designer for my new project. If not, I know a bad one. Me. Write back if you're interested." I smiled at my laptop screen and replied. We started corresponding. At first, it was about work. He offered a small order, a logo, and a couple of screens for a mobile app. Then the letters became longer, not just about work. He wrote about the movies he watched, about books, about how he brews coffee at home because in coffee shops it's always either overcooked or too weak. I replied more briefly, more cautiously, but I replied. In August, we met for coffee. It wasn't a date, just coffee after the project was delivered. We sat in a small coffee shop near my office and talked about trivial things. Alec talked about his work. He was writing code for a startup that was developing a food delivery app. The market is oversaturated, but they are confident that they have something unique. I just write what they ask for, get paid, and don't ask unnecessary questions. It was easy with him. For the first time in many years, really easy. He didn't try to find out my story, didn't ask about my family, didn't pressure me. He was just there, smiling, listening when I spoke. We started seeing each other more often, once a week, then twice. Coffee. Sometimes movies. Once we went to an exhibition in a small gallery. Nothing serious, nothing burdensome. Just pleasant. In September, I was already thinking about him before bed. I remembered how he laughed at my joke, how he adjusted his glasses when he was thinking, how he once walked me home because I didn't want to walk alone late at night. I didn't tell him about my parents. He didn't ask. Maybe he sensed it was a painful subject. Maybe he just didn't want to get involved. One evening, on Wednesday, September 23rd, the doorbell rang. It was already 9:30, and I was about to go to bed. I looked at the video intercom and froze. Emmy. She was standing at the door with her head bowed. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back into a tight ponytail. Her jacket was old and worn. Her face was pale with dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. My first thought was not to open the door. Just pretend I wasn't home. She'll wait a moment and then leave. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she looked. Maybe it was just fatigue from holding a grudge. I pressed the intercom button. "What do you want?" Emmy raised her head and looked at the camera. "Can I come in?" "I need to talk." "Talk from there." "Vio, please. 5 minutes." I stood there with my finger on the button. Part of me screamed, "No, don't let her in. She's here for something. They're always here for something." But I pressed the door open button. Emmy climbed the 4th floor slowly. I could hear her footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, tired. When she reached my door, I was already standing in the doorway, not inviting her in. She stopped at the threshold. We looked at each other silently. We hadn't seen each other for 6 months. She had lost weight and aged. I am 31, she is 27, but now we look the same age. "Can I come in?" Emmy asked quietly. I moved aside to let her in. She came in and stopped in the hallway. She didn't take off her coat or her shoes. She just stood there. "Talk," I said. "Dad's sick." The words fell into the silence like a stone into water. I felt something tighten inside me. What's wrong with him? Cancer. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I leaned against the wall. My legs felt like cotton wool. When? He was diagnosed in May. He didn't want to tell anyone. He said he could handle it. He had 3 rounds of chemotherapy. It didn't help. Now, Emmy's voice broke. Now the doctors say there's one chance. Surgery in Canada, experimental. The chances are slim, 10%, maybe 15%, but it's the only thing left. And? Emmy looked at me. Her eyes were red and wet. The operation costs $50,000. Insurance doesn't cover it. It's an experimental procedure. We spent everything on chemotherapy, tests, and medication. The house is mortgaged. We took out a loan. We have no savings. She wiped her face with her hand. I tried to find the money. I applied for loans, crowdfunding, wrote to all my friends. No one can help. No one has that kind of money. I was silent. One word kept spinning in my head. 50,000. You're the only one, Vio, Emmy whispered. I know that what happened between us. I know we behaved terribly. But this is Dad. He's dying. If we don't do the operation, he has 2 months at most. Please. She cried. Not loudly, almost silently. Her shoulders shook. Tears ran down her cheeks. I stood and looked at her. My chest was filled with a mixture of emotions that I couldn't separate. Pain. Dad is dying. Anger. Why didn't they tell me earlier? Why do they only call me when they need money? And exhaustion. Deep, heavy fatigue. Why didn't you tell me in May? I finally asked. Dad didn't want to. He said he could handle it himself, that he didn't want to bother you after everything. After Mom asked me not to contact you? Emma nodded, lowering her gaze. After you disinherited me? Emma nodded again. After you didn't contact me for 6 months. Vi, don't call me that, I interrupted sharply. You have no right. She fell silent. We stood in silence. A car drove by outside the window. A cat meowed somewhere. I need time to think, I finally said. We don't have time. The operation has to be done within 2 weeks. I said I need time. Leave me the clinic's contact details. Emmy took a crumpled piece of paper out of her pocket. She handed it to me. I took it without looking at it. Please call, Emmy whispered. If not for us, then for Dad. She left. I closed the door behind her, locked it, and leaned my back against it. The piece of paper trembled in my hands. I unfolded it. The name of the clinic, the address, the phone number, the amount, $50,000. I had $6,800 in my savings account. In my main account, I had about $20,000 saved up over the years. In my business account, I had $13,000. In the old account I opened when I was 20, I had $9,000. In total, I had $48,800, almost everything I had. I sat down on the floor in the hallway and called Tessa. Hi, she answered. It's late. Is everything okay? Emmy was just here. Tessa was silent for a second. What did she want? I told her. Tessa listened silently. What are you going to do? She asked when I finished. I don't know. You have the right to say no, Veo. After everything they've done, you have the right. I know. But you won't say no, will you? I was silent. Veo. I can't, I whispered. It's Dad. He's dying. They haven't changed, you understand? They'll come for the money and disappear again. I know. Then why? Because otherwise I won't be able to live with myself. Tessa sighed. Okay, do what you think is right, but promise me you won't expect any thanks from them. Don't expect anything to change. I won't. We said goodbye. I called Alec. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hi, did something happen? I told him briefly. He listened without interrupting. What do you want to do? He asked. Give him money. Why? Because he's my dad. Even after everything? Even after everything. Alec was silent for a minute. Okay, he said finally. Then do it. But remember, you're doing this for yourself, not for them. For yourself. I know. The next morning, I transferred the money. I took it from all my accounts, everywhere I had savings, $50,000, almost everything I had earned over the years. I sent Emmy the transfer confirmation and wrote briefly, "For Dad, not for you." I turned off my phone. I sat down on the floor in the middle of the empty apartment and cried, not out of regret, not out of resentment, out of relief, because I did what I had to do, and now I am truly free. November came with cold rains and gray skies that seemed to last for weeks. I looked out the office window at the wet streets and thought about how it had been 2 months since I transferred the money. I didn't find out about my dad from my family. Tessa called on Wednesday evening, her voice agitated. "Vio, I just ran into your mom at the supermarket." I froze, holding my cup of tea. "And?" "She told me that the operation had been successful. Your dad is recovering. They came back from Canada a week ago." I put the cup down on the table so Tessa wouldn't hear my hands shaking. "Okay, thanks for telling me." "Vio, she didn't ask about you. I asked her myself how you were doing. She just nodded and left." We were silent. "Are you okay?" Tessa asked. "Yes," I replied. And strangely, it was true. I received one message from Emmy, short, emotionless. "Dad is alive. Thanks." That was it. No phone call, no details, no invitation to come and see him. I read the message, locked my phone, and went back to work. I didn't feel hurt. Something else. Emptiness, perhaps, or simply acceptance of what I had known for a long time. To them, I was just a lifeline. When the need disappeared, I became superfluous again. They didn't return the money, of course. I didn't expect them to. $50,000 disappeared as if it had never been there. My savings account was empty, and my main account was almost empty too. A little over $2,000 remained for current expenses. Strangely, I had no regrets. I didn't give that money to them. I gave it to myself, so I could sleep peacefully, knowing I had done everything I could. Now it's their story, their choice, and I'm free. Alec appeared in my life gradually, like dawn. At first imperceptibly, then suddenly you realize it's already daytime. We started spending more time together. On weekends, we went to the movies and walked in the park, even when it was cold and wet. On weeknights, he would come over with Chinese takeout, and we would watch TV shows and talk about trivial things. Once in October, he was cooking dinner at his place. He invited me over, saying he wanted to show off his culinary talents. I arrived at 7, and he opened the door wearing an apron, smiling. "Spaghetti carbonara," he announced solemnly, "my signature recipe." We ate in the small kitchen, sitting across from each other at a narrow table. Alec told me about his family. His parents divorced when he was 15. No scandal, no drama. They just realized they didn't want to be together anymore. "They remained friends," he said, twirling spaghetti on his fork. "For my sister and me. They didn't pretend everything was fine, but they didn't turn our lives into a battlefield either. Just grown-ups making grown-up decisions." I listened, feeling something like envy. Not anger, just sadness. I wanted to have parents like that, who would respect me as an individual, not as an extension of themselves or an eternal source of help. "My mom once told me," Alec continued, "that love isn't a duty, it's a choice. You choose to love someone every day, and if there is no choice, if you do something just because you have to or you are obliged to, that's not love. That's prison." He looked at me. "You don't owe anyone anything just because you were born, Violet. Not even your parents." I put down my fork. My throat tightened. It sounds simple when you say it. Because it is simple. People complicate it because of guilt, fear, habit. But in essence, it's simple. You live your life. They live theirs. And that's okay. That evening, I came home late, around 11. I walked, even though Alec offered me a ride. I wanted to be alone with my thoughts. His words spun around in my head, wouldn't let go. You don't owe anyone anything just because you were born. Why didn't anyone tell me this before? Why didn't I think of it myself? The meeting took place the following week. Alec and I were sitting in a coffee shop near my office, the same one where I used to meet with Tessa. It was Saturday lunchtime, and there weren't many people around. We ordered sandwiches and coffee and talked about his new project. I saw her first. Mom walked in, stopped at the counter, and waited for her order. Wendy looked older than I remembered, gray-haired even though she used to dye her hair, thinner. She was dressed simply, jeans, a jacket, nothing new. She turned around, her gaze swept across the room and stopped on me. We looked at each other for 5 seconds, maybe 10. I saw something flash in her eyes, surprise, maybe even something else. But she didn't come over. She just turned away, picked up her order, and left. "Are you okay?" Alec asked, noticing that I had frozen. I smiled. "Yes, everything's fine." And it was true. I expected to feel pain, hurt, something sharp, but I felt only calm. It was as if a chapter had closed and I could finally turn the page. That night, lying in bed, I thought about everything that had happened, about how I would never get what I always wanted from my parents: recognition, love, equality with Emmy. They would never say, "I'm sorry." They would never say thank you sincerely. They would never understand how much I had given. And that hurt. But it was their choice, not my fault. I gave them my childhood. The years when I should have been just a kid, not a little mom to Emmy. I gave them my youth, summer camp, parties, carefree days. I gave them money, time, care. And still, it wasn't enough. Because the problem was never me. It was them, in their inability to see me as a separate person, in their habit of taking without giving, in their confidence that I would always be there, no matter what. I cried that night, for the last time as it turned out, not out of self-pity, out of farewell. Farewell to the hope that someday everything would be different. Farewell to the version of my parents that I had invented in my head, loving, caring, grateful. In the morning, I woke up feeling lighter, as if I had taken off a backpack that I had been carrying for years. In December, I was offered a big project, rebranding for a medium-sized business, a company with 25 employees that sells furniture online. They needed a new logo, corporate identity, website design, and packaging. The deadline was 6 months, and the budget was $30,000. I sat in a meeting with the director, listened to his wishes, and thought, I can do this. It's a challenge, but I'm ready. I signed the contract the next day. The first installment, $10,000, came a week later. I looked at my account balance and felt something like pride. I am recovering. I am rebuilding. And this time, it's just for myself. Alex suggested we move in together in January. We were sitting in his apartment watching a movie when he suddenly paused it. "Listen, I have an idea," he said, a little awkwardly. "Maybe it's too soon. Maybe it's silly. But I was thinking, maybe we should try living together." I looked at him, not understanding right away. "Not like an engagement, not forever," he hastened to add. "Just to try, see how it goes. If it doesn't work out, okay, no hard feelings. But I think we can make it work." I was silent for a minute. I thought about my apartment. Small, but mine. I thought about the independence I had worked so hard to achieve. I thought about how scary it was to trust again. But then I looked at Alec. Simple, sincere, patient. And I realized, it's scary, but I want to try. "Let's look for something new," I said. "Not yours, not mine. Ours." He smiled so broadly that I couldn't help but smile too. We started looking for an apartment the following week. We looked at options online and went to viewings. Most were either too expensive, too small, or in bad neighborhoods. But in February, we found one. A 2-room apartment on the second floor of an old building with high ceilings and large windows. The rent was higher than what I paid for my 1-room apartment, but we split it in half. It worked out even cheaper. We signed the contract for March 1st. I had a month to pack my things. I packed slowly, a few boxes per evening. 5 years in this apartment. I had accumulated a lot. Clothes, books, work materials, dishes, knickknacks. In the closet, I found an old family album, heavy with a leather cover embossed with the Morrow family. My mother gave it to me 5 years ago. Hold on to it, we have nowhere to store it. I brought it into the room, sat on the floor, and opened it. The first photo, my mother and father, young, maybe 25 years old. Wendy is smiling, Ethan is hugging her. They look happy. I looked at this photo for a long time, trying to see in them the people they had become. I couldn't. Next was a photo of my mom pregnant, then me, a newborn. My mom is holding me in her arms, looking tired but happy. I flipped through the pages. Here I am at 1 year old sitting on a rug with toys. Here I am at 2, in kindergarten with other children. Here I am at 3, drawing something on paper, my mother standing next to me. Then Emmy appears. My mother is pregnant again in the photo. I am standing next to her, holding my hand on her belly. I am 4. Emmy is a newborn. I'm sitting on the sofa. My mother puts her on my lap. I look serious, a little scared. So small. I kept turning the pages. The photos become less frequent. My parents took fewer pictures, probably, or they just didn't have time. One photo stopped me. I am 9 years old. Emmy is 6. We are standing in the garden near my parents' house, holding hands. We are both wearing summer dresses, both laughing. The sun is shining, the grass is green, everything looks perfect. I looked at this photo for a long time. At myself, at 9, not yet knowing what would happen next. Thinking that family is forever, that parents love equally, that she is important not only as a helper. I wanted to say something to her, to warn her, to explain. But what? That her parents would use her? That Emmy would always be the favorite? That love would have to be earned, and even then it might not work out. I carefully closed the album. I put it back in the box and closed the lid. I didn't throw it away. I couldn't. But I didn't take it with me either. I took the box back to the storeroom. I left it there, in its old place, among other forgotten things. In the evening, when everything was already packed, I sat down at the table and opened my diary. I started keeping it after that scandal in the stairwell. The therapist I had seen several times in the fall advised me to write. It helps to structure your thoughts, he said. At first I didn't believe it, but I tried, and it really did help. I wrote my last entry. I didn't get a happy ending with them. My parents didn't apologize. Emmy didn't understand. We didn't become a family again, like in the movies. And it hurts, but it's okay. I got something better. Freedom. Freedom not to be responsible for other people's choices. Not to justify wanting to live my own life. Not to prove that I'm good enough. Maybe someday I'll be able to remember my childhood without pain. Maybe I'll even forgive them. Not for their sake, but for my own. But for now, I'm just moving on, without them. And that's okay, too. I closed my diary and put down my pen. It was getting dark outside, my last evening in this apartment. On the morning of March 1st, a truck arrived. Alec and his friend helped load the boxes. I stood in the empty apartment looking at the bare walls, at the place where the bed had stood, at the kitchen where I had made coffee thousands of mornings. "Ready?" Alec asked, appearing in the doorway. I turned and looked at him, then back at the apartment, then back at Alec. "Yes," I smiled. "Let's go." We went out into the hallway. I locked the door for the last time and gave the keys to the landlord who was waiting downstairs. Alec put his arm around my shoulders as we stood by the truck. "Everything will be fine," he said quietly. "I know," I replied, and I really did know. For the first time in many years, I really knew. We got into the car. Alec started the engine, and I looked out the window at the house where I had lived for 5 years, then at the street, the city, the sky, which had finally cleared after weeks of rain. "Let's go," I repeated, and we went. To a new life, a new apartment, a new future. Without parents who never learned to love, without Emmy, who never learned to appreciate, without the guilt that had eaten at me for years. Just me and Alec and the road ahead. And that was enough.